Luis Robert Jr. going on the 10-day IL has become an annual tradition to the point where it doesn't matter anymore if he's on the injured list. But what does matter is who gets his roster spot. And let's discuss why it should be Colson Montgomery on today's episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan, a contributor for SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the FanSided Network, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already, and also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Luis Robert Jr. going on the IL has become as common as construction on the Kennedy. Let's discuss in the first segment that while it's likely Brooks Baldwin gets called up to take his spot on the 26-man roster, maybe top 5 prospect Colson Montgomery should get the opportunity after the great week he had at AAA. Then Teel says he likes celebrating victories. Let's discuss how if he keeps having huge days like he did yesterday, there's a chance for more winning to take place as a young core matures. And finally, it's Monday, so let's do a Minor League Monday report. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Okay, so basically, Luis Robert Jr. going on the 10-day IL, all it just does is really just completely tanks his trade value. Because the former All-Star is now he is on the 10-day IL with a hamstring strain. And while manager Will Venable said after the game that this is a move to be cautious, should not be a long-term IL stint, it's just another season where he goes on the injured list. Outside of that great 2023 season, which seems forever ago now, it seems like at least 3 or 4 lifetimes ago. LRJ has missed a lot of time, and let's add in now that he's terrible at the plate. I mean, this year he's been downright awful. Before 2023, the argument was, well, he's just inconsistent. Last year he was injured to where he only played 100 games. This year he's just straight up bad, and now he's got a bad hammy. And can the White Sox still trade him? Yeah. I mean, he still has value when healthy as a plus defensive center fielder, can steal bases, can hit left-handed pitching still, but he strikes out a lot, and he can't hit righties, and you can never trust him to stay healthy. So basically, you are trading, you're probably trading for a pennies on the dollar. I mean, that's basically, you are not going to be getting what you thought was going to be a timeline accelerating trade package. And the White Sox, at this recording, have not announced a corresponding move. They said they would announce it before Tuesday's game. And the easy money is on Brooks Baldwin getting the call-up because he's been given the reps at AAA in center, and he didn't play yesterday in the night's game against Toledo. However, after the week Colson Montgomery had against Toledo, might I suggest he is the one who gets the plane ticket to Los Angeles and joins a team when they play the Dodgers tomorrow. And the reason is again, Luis Robert Jr.'s trade value in the tanker. Probably not going to get you that major package like you got for Garrett Crochet that's going to accelerate your rebuild timeline. But if Colson Montgomery can emerge as your everyday shortstop, that is going to help your timeline. And now you can say, well, Todd, isn't Colson struggling to hit at AAA Charlotte? Well, what he did to the Mudhens was what everyone has been hoping for him to do when he got assigned to minor league camp in spring training after, he lost some time due to some back issues. He raked. I mean, he absolutely crushed the ball in those 5 games against the Mudheads. He took his slash line from 187, 271, 351 at the beginning of the week to now 220, 296, 445. He went 11 for 22 with 4 home runs, a triple, 2 doubles, and 8 RBIs. Still struck out 5 times, but hey, when you hit 500 during a series and you have a 2 home run game like he did on Saturday, I don't care if he Ks a bit. Hit the long ball. Get yourself at least a 750, 800 OPS. I mean, you'd like to see his on-base percentage get up a little bit, and he has had the ability to get on base, but even at the majors, if he's just hitting 230, 240, but if he's hitting 30 bombs, that's your everyday shortstop. Now, I do get, before you're like, whoa, Todd, you're getting way ahead of yourself. I get it's one good week against Detroit's farm system that features only 2 pitchers in their top 30. Like, that's it. They only have 2 players at their AAA level in their top 30, and one is a reliever. But still, I'd say why not go with the hotter bat? Because Baldwin, he was 6 for 18 with a home run in the Toledo series, but why not go with the hotter bat in Montgomery to see, can he make an impact against one of the best teams in baseball? I get it is a very high bar to set. And Baldwin in his own right has been hitting very well at AAA Charlotte. He has a 368 average with a 1.162 OPS. But here's where it gets different. The reason why I say why not go with the hotter hand. Montgomery seems to be viewed as a super utility player in terms of his ceiling. I think they're hoping that he is Leury Garcia 2.0 all the way up to Ben Zobrist. Otherwise, I don't think they see him as a starter at a specific position. I think they still hope that Colson Montgomery is going to be their everyday shortstop. He is their shortstop of the future. So, yes, I get it's a huge challenge to ask him to make his big league debut against the Dodgers. But first of all, it's a banged-up Dodgers rotation. I mean, Blake Snell, Roki Sasaki, and Tyler Glasnow all on the 60-day IL. I mean, obviously, the White Sox are still going to face Yamamoto, Kershaw, and Dustin May. But May gives up homers. Yamamoto has actually also given up 9 long balls. And Kershaw's actually allowed 5 in his 8 starts. So there's a chance to get some dingers off these guys. Even though Yamamoto is obviously an ace and Kershaw is a future Hall of Famer. And I know MLB.com, Scott Merkin, in his most recent write-up, talking about Colson, he's suggesting the following week when the White Sox come home to face the Guardians to potentially call up Colson and make his major league debut. But why not ride the hotter bat that is just crushing home runs and use this as the perfect time to get, at the very least, a sense of how Montgomery will do in the big leagues. It could be a 2-week audition. Instead of, first of all, hey, we're going to call him up a week before the All-Star break, give him like 7 games. Granted, it's at home. I get the logic. But why not give him just a little bit of a longer run just to get an audition, just to get a taste, just to get a cup of coffee? Especially with the Colorado Rockies after the Dodgers at Coors Field coming up. Why not give him that opportunity? Because what is another week at the minors going to accomplish if he continues to hit? It reinforces he's making progress. And I get that's what the organization wants to do. They want to actually see consistent production from Colson Montgomery before they say, yep, you're coming up. But on the flip side, what if he continues to be actually inconsistent? Because that's actually what he's been since he was actually pulled from game action and sent to Arizona basically for swing school. He came back, had I believe a solid week or two, although, he basically became a target for getting hit by pitches in his knee and his wrist, which did cause a little bit of some aches and pains, maybe a little bit more of an injury. And maybe he's now starting to heal up where he feels much better and absolutely raked in Toledo. But why not get some big league data in this context when you have the roster spot? Because if he has another bad week, then what? We're just still delaying the inevitable, pushing it off. And while I'm not a huge fan of basically you're going to have to play then Lenine Sosa at first base because Ryan Noda, he's not hitting very well. And, I would like some power actually in this lineup against facing the Dodgers. I would not like to have the concept of Vinny Capra or Josh Rojas facing the Dodgers. So that means you got to put Lenine Sosa at first because then you play Vargas at third, Mydroth at second, Montgomery at short. But you're fine, actually, in the outfield where you technically don't need Brooks Baldwin yet. I get maybe it's this, they're kicking the tires on wanting to see what Baldwin can do once they eventually trade Luis Robert Jr., but you're fine in the outfield right now with Benintendi, Michael A. Taylor, Mike Tauchman, and Austin Slater. And if Montgomery hits well in these 2 weeks, then you make a decision on, do you send him back to the minors just for a little bit more time? Just be patient. We'll get you back up in September when we can get some of these guys off the roster. I think that would be a nice use of this roster spot. But again, if they call Baldwin, he's swinging a decent bat, and he still has to prove can he hit at the major league level too. Well, Kyle Teel had a monster game yesterday and told reporters that he likes celebrating victories. And let's discuss how his game growing along with his fellow rookie catcher Edgar Quero growing can help him enjoy a lot more victory celebrations. And that's after the break on Locked On White Sox. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You already are following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. FanDuel's traditional money line spreads and over-unders are fun to play, but I always maintain if you want to win big or at least double or even triple your money, then you got to go with FanDuel's parlays, props, and futures. For example, Detroit might be the first team to have reached 50 wins this season, but they're still plus 800 to win the World Series. $10 on that right now, and Detroit does win the whole thing. That's $80 in your pocket. And who cares if it's division rival this season? You know, the season's lost for the White Sox. So why not make some money? You could potentially triple your money if you put, say, $10 on Garrett Crochet winning the Cy Young, as it's currently at plus 350, and that's $35 in your pocket if he does win the award. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. So after yesterday's victory against the San Francisco Giants, where the White Sox have now won their 8th series of the season, rookie catcher Kyle Teel had this to say via Vinny Duber of the Chicago Sun-Times, quote, "Winning is so fun. I love celebrating wins," end quote. And the Sox have won 4 of the past 6 games he has started, and they have won actually 3 series since he debuted. So if his game grows at the rate he's been playing at, he might have a chance to celebrate more victories than morning losses. And for the record, the Sox are 7-8 in the games he has played since debuting on June 6th. Although the White Sox will have to figure out, how do you balance him and Edgar Quero at catching? And also then, how do you get Quero going again, at least at the plate? Because behind the plate, Quero was huge in Saturday's win. Throws out a runner at third on a strike him out, throw him out situation late in the game. And that kept the game at the eventual, that kept the score at the game's eventual conclusion of 1-0. That was huge. The White Sox win 1-0 on Saturday, 5-2 on Sunday. But when it comes to winning, the next step will be getting both on the same page, at least in terms of being positive WAR players. Because right now, Teel is already at a 0.6 FWAR. Quero is at a minus 0.1. And the last 7 days obviously have been very impressive for Teel, as he has a 533 average with a 1.296 OPS over the past 7 days. Quero, on the other hand, it's been a struggle. A 100 average, a 382 OPS in his past 7 days. And that's why I've said the maturation of the young core. And even in a lot of ways, if Quero and Teel can keep hitting overall like they are, those are almost your cornerstone guys, although they both play catcher. So you got to figure out who's going to get the other at-bats as their careers go on at catcher. And I'm getting to the point where it might be time to add Teel to core status after the impressive week he's had. He had 3 hit games. Although I would say maybe a few more weeks just to make sure he can do this all again, on that. But he is getting very, very close to where I'm going to say, yeah, that's a certified core guy. But these young guys like Teel and Quero still have to grow for more wins to be gained. They still need a lot more pieces in the lineup added around them, because they only got Vargas and Chase Mydroth. And again, maybe Colson Montgomery. Just saying. But I will also say, too, these guys eventually have to put the ball over the fence. Because right now they're hitting for average, which I know I sound like a broken record, but that's fine because they got a lot of other things to figure out at the big league level. But eventually they still have to put the ball over the fence. Teel hitting a double is good. It's a good sign. But you would like to see your catchers hit home runs. And Quero's got to get better, in crunch situations, as he does hit 293 with runners in scoring position. However, add 2 outs to the RISP situation, and his average is 182. And that's like the one situation, like runners in scoring position, that's like the one place where you definitely want to look at average still, because you just want to hit with runners in scoring position, obviously. If it's a home run, awesome. That's even better. That's why, OPS still matters in that, but you just want to hit, in my opinion, when it comes to runners in scoring position. Teel's hitting 333 with RISP and 300 with RISP and 2 outs. So he's showing some clutch traits already. Quero, got to get a little bit better, at least when it's really crunch time. When you got runners in scoring position and you still got 2 outs, you got to deliver there. And their growth as hitters is just as vital as their growth defensively behind the plate if the team does want to celebrate more victories. That's why I dedicated the first segment of a show last week on why I was kind of upset with, manager Will Venable being so close-minded to playing Teel and Quero at other spots. I mean, he thinks the at-bats are there. And I would say outside of Monday and Saturday, when the Sox face 2 lefty starters, because Teel is 1 for 6 already against lefties, I think they missed some chances to have both getting 4 at-bats every game. And I get that both will need a day off since they're both catching. You want to give them their legs at least a full day, or again, you get them in for a pinch hit situation. But I want to see more of them in the lineup every day. But again, they're so close-minded that, well, then one of them has to DH. And you want to be like, it doesn't have to be that way, especially since the season is lost. And I get I should probably pump the brakes by getting upset that, they still haven't put Teel in, the outfield more because he has the athleticism to play it. The reports are he was a very solid, actually, defensive catcher defensive outfielder when he played there sometimes for Virginia. I think he only catched 1 year at Virginia too. So it's not like he can't play it. He even said that when he briefly played left field when that game went extra innings. I think it was the Cardinals game. He was welcoming the chance to have the ball hit to him because he was saying it's like riding a bike. But I mean, I get it, because a lot of it is just still their game's maturing and development doesn't happen overnight. And obviously they still have plenty of time to grow their game even this season. And, as this team does need to add plenty of more pieces around them to celebrate more wins, but it's nice to see the infusion of Quero and Teel leading to some more victories. Well, on this week's Minor League Monday Report, I wanted to discuss top prospect Noah Schultz's rough outing and his fellow top left-handed pitching prospect Hagen Smith's return to game action, and I want to discuss that after the break on Locked On White Sox. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. I recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. So Hagen Smith returned to the mound, and he looked refreshed, and he was just downright nasty. Noah Schultz, on the other hand, had another rough one for AAA Charlotte, although there's some context for why it might be happening. And there's also a reminder that I want to go over of when to possibly get super, super nervous, since the front office made it clear what they will be looking for in terms of Schultz's starts going forward. So for Smith, he did return to the mound for the first time since May 10th after experiencing some elbow soreness. That's when the velocity was just all over the place. He was, the elbow was getting a little hurt there. They pulled him. They sent him to this team spring training facility to heal up and work on some biomechanical stuff. And when he returned on Saturday, his stuff looked like the reason he was taken with the 5th overall pick in last year's draft. Overpowering and mostly missing bats. He was on a pitch count, however, so his appearance was just 1 2/3 innings, but he struck out 3 Cubs AA players. He did allow a hit, and he walked 1 as well, but he's not going to be perfect, especially if he's playing against Cubs prospects. The Cubs can develop some hitting, but it was nice to see him just throwing some heat past everybody. His appearance was so short. By the time I got home to watch the Barons game, because I wanted to watch it that night, he was already out. So I was like, oh man, at least I rewound it. And I was impressed with a lot of his swing and miss stuff that he was, getting past some of those Cubs prospects there. For Schultz, though, he got hit and hit hard in his second AAA start on Friday. And this one meets the criteria for being nervous because he missed the front office's standard, as this is what Chris Getz had to say per Jack Ankeny of Sports Illustrated after Schultz's first AAA start. Quote, he had a pretty good outing, gave up some runs, but you look at the strikeout to walk ratio and that type of contact that was hit, it was a quality outing. We felt he was ready for the next challenge. He pitched well, but to get a guy to go up to AAA for someone that's still fairly young in his development is a feather in the cap of Noah Schultz and certainly the organization. We're going to continue to pitch him at the AAA level, and we'll see how the season finishes, end quote. Okay, so the second outing, Schultz gave up 5 runs on 5 hits. He walked 4, struck out 4 in just 2 innings. And this was in Toledo. This was not at Truist Field in Charlotte, which is a hitter-friendly ballpark. So the way I see it, first of all, I agree with how Getz is actually going to judge him. We got to look at the walks and strikeouts and the hard contact. But I don't agree when it's at Charlotte, in that bandbox of Truist Field, against the Mudheads, where the Tigers have none of their hitters that are in their top 30. They got to him. They got Gage Workman in their lineup. Remember his the brief White Sox kicking the tires on him and the Cubs? And he got roughed up. However, before I get completely nervous, Dylan Barnes of Future Sox made a good point on X from me Twitter that, maybe let's pump the brakes before we get totally, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. This is what he tweets out. And for those watching on YouTube, I do have the tweet. This is at NotCease. 1, Schultz is using big league balls for the first time. Plenty of young pitchers struggle with command for a bit when they're introduced to them. B, Schultz got 13 whiffs on 21 swings. I'll take a 62% whiff rate any day of the week. He's fine. Don't overreact. Although, the one thing to young Dylan, I know he works hard and he works for a very good White Sox publication when it comes to, or a fan publication when it comes to covering the prospects. But a lot of White Sox fans of an older age like me, we get a little nervous because how many times have we seen guys be so overhyped and then just be terrible? I mean, I can still remember John Rosh when he was drafted, and look, we got the next Randy Johnson. And while he did go on to have a fine career as a closer, it was not with the White Sox. But the reason I do want to, I do have to learn from the young sometimes, is he is building up his arm to handle a big league starter's load. I mean, Schultz is already at 64 innings. Last year, he pitched 88 1/3, and it was exclusively on Saturdays and 4 innings max. So there are now new wrinkles being added, and he's got to adjust. Like the added of another team might see him twice in a series, because remember, they play 5 games. Depending on, does he go Tuesday, Sunday, that type of stuff. There might be a little bit more of a book on him, at least where minor league teams will know, okay, he likes to do this. And also, I believe it was James Fegan of SoxMachine.com. He pointed out when he was he was a guest on the CHGO podcast with former host of this show, Sean Anderson, that we got to remember that's a lot of long limbs that you're trying to sync up for good mechanics to throw strikes. It's a biomechanical nightmare sometimes. I mean, think about it. It took Randy Johnson until I believe a few years into his big league career. I want to say it was 1993 when he actually started posting respectable whips at the big league level. Because if you look at the first 4 years of his career, I believe his whip was always at 1.4, 1.5, 1.6. Yeah, he could overpower, and that's the other reason why you might be saying to yourself then, if you're cynical, why are we even taking these big, long-limbed pitchers to begin with? Well, one of it is the arm extension. You're able to release the ball much closer to the plate. It makes, speeds up the timeline there for the hitter to make a decision. And in the case of definitely in the case of Schultz, who can throw mid to upper 90s, the velocity, just like Randy Johnson. Schultz isn't like a Chris Young situation when he pitched for the Padres, where Chris Young was he was a tall guy. He was 6'11", but he was more of an off-speed guy. And also Schultz has that three-quarter arm angle that they like from a left-handed pitcher. But bigger pitchers sometimes take a little bit more time to figure out what can work to get command and nastiness, and then to get it all sync up consistently where they can definitely be pinpoint control. And again, last year, yeah, it was very impressive, but again, he was only pitching once a week, 4 innings. The result was just, hey, let's work on your pitches. Well, let's work on your pitches. Now it's refinement, and now it's also, can your arm hold up? Can you handle a starter's load? Just like all these young arms are being asked to do. So I'll say if he's getting lit up like a Christmas tree on the road in, say, August and September, then yeah, I'm going to be very worried. But right now, I agree. It's just part of the development process. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White. Oh, and really quick before that wraps up, he will be pitching in the Futures game. The White Sox just announced it. As I'm recording this, Braden Montgomery will also join Noah Schultz in the Futures All-Star game. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'll be back tomorrow to discuss if the Sox can shock the world and at least win a game in LA, along with a couple of mailbag questions. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding why it might be worth giving Colson Montgomery a shot to take Luis Robert Jr.'s spot on the 26-man roster, Kyle Teel and Edgar Quero maturing into winning players, and this week's Minor League Monday report. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at ToddJDub or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.